Maybe like a subsection of this episode.
Yeah. We'll do that.
Go around the horn. Yeah. Try to identify.
Oh my God.
How do you know?
Like, I'm out. Welcome to a long-lost episode, not so much, of How Stupid People Succeed. I'm Josh, this guy's Jeremy, and our guest right here is Mr. Jerrod Slater himself.
Slate.
What's up? So, Jerrod, thanks for coming on with us. We had, I know with everything that's been going on in our culture, I know post-COVID, quarantine, all that fun stuff, or I guess still in the midst of it, but on the heels of the George Floyd situation, the riots, the protests, Jeremy and I, we wanted to have you on to just really chat with you to try to help people get a better understanding and of what's going on, because I know I've shared with you, I've shared with Jeremy, just like, like I live in a small little world, and I'm oblivious to a lot of stuff that goes on in my world or outside of that world. And so like, just trying to understand, I guess, the racial divide and the racial struggle that's out there that is certainly a real thing. I don't see that a whole lot. I mean, like I understand that it's there, but I don't see it on a day in, day out basis, like you do by any stretch of the imagination. So, like I thought it would be a good thing to kind of have you on here and just kind of chat.
Yeah. No, let's do it. Let's get awkward.
Yeah.
Let's get uncomfortable.
Well, I think that's what has to happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? There's no resolution without conflict.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, conflict for a lot of people carry this very heavy negative connotation, but everything that results in growth or benefit is born out of conflict. And I think the ultimate disrespect as a white guy, and I'm probably gonna make this very
we're
color coded, right? So so what people don't know, and we'll throw this out there. I've known you since you were 6 years old. A huge chunk of my childhood was spent in your home.
Yeah, eating McDonald's, supersized fries,
watching 6-year-old Jerrod Slater get a supersized value meal, and I'm 3 years older than you. Like, I wanted a Happy Meal. I want a toy. I can't let the 6-year-old show me up. And that's what got me into 33 Huskies.
Yep.
So definitely knew there were some cultural differences.
Yeah.
Definitely knew there were some genetic differences, as you were eating more than me and ripped at the age of 6. And I'm just this pudgy little white kid getting outran by a 6-year-old. That was awesome to learn those. First time I ever watched Def Comedy Jam was at your house.
You want to talk about a cultural experience.
And that was cultural shock for me.
Yeah.
And honestly, that was one of the first early on experiences I've ever had directly with understanding racism.
Yeah.
And
before you go on, let's talk about my parents being okay with their 6-year-old son watching Def Comedy Jam. I think it's because of the cultural impact that they knew it was going to have.
It was like watching In Living Color. It's just you should have watched it.
Lived.
It's like educational in a sense.
Sorry, I'm going to cut you off.
No worries. But my grandmother, so she is from North Carolina.
Okay.
Grew up extremely impoverished. Sharecrop workers. All this stuff. So in the time that she grew up, particularly being in the area of North Carolina, she had obviously a very now horrible term that was everyday common language. And when your brother and I first started hanging out, my grandmother, not knowing, not thinking, not really being up on the time, she had made a reference. And I remember being a little kid and I just started crying.
Yeah.
And my parents were like, "What's wrong with you?" And I'm like, "Grandma's racist."
Yeah.
And so my parents literally had to sit down with me of explaining, like, no. Your grandma's totally cool with everything, but this is literally how she was raised.
Yeah.
And my grandma obviously changed with the time, so she didn't continue that or do anything like that. And so I'm proud of my family in that regard, but also the exposure within your family. And I remember watching Def Comedy Jam and sitting there like, this whole show is just making fun of white people, but it's accurate. It's hard to argue with truth thrown in your face. So, but even with that, even with those experiences, we don't want to make the mistake of assuming we know,
Yeah.
or we can speak to it because we haven't lived it.
Yeah.
Again, like when we were talking earlier, it'd be like me trying to tell my wife I understand what it was like to give birth to one of our 2 children, and she would immediately cut me off.
Shuts that down real
and
quick.
shut it all down, just
Aaron
like any
does
of
the
our
same
wives
thing,
would do. For like, oh man, my leg hurt. Oh, you know, like don't even compare. So in that case, I think especially, hey, PSA for all the white people out there, don't assume. Have a conversation, or reach out to somebody that you're close to. And also be very careful of statements that you make, because anytime you form it in question, it can be handled a lot better than maybe a very small world-minded statement.
Yeah.
And so with you, obviously, we feel comfortable having this conversation, which I think is hugely significant right now, because what I see a lot of people at high tense, high pressure, high emotion.
Yeah.
And so for me, and just the way I think personally is, I mean, it's very vague, but where do we go from here?
Yeah.
What's my part? What's Josh's part? What's your part? How do we take this opportunity that feels like it's a window in time for legitimate change?
Yeah.
I think in times past, there was outrage.
Yeah.
And there was some rioting. So if you go back to like Ferguson or whatever, go way back in time to, again, we talked a little bit about Flint, Michigan.
Yeah.
What do you think allows right now to be a time for legitimate change in education?
Well, you know, to start, you know, obviously what sparked all of this is the George Floyd video, right? Regardless, you know, white, black, Democrat, Republican, whatever, it doesn't matter. You watch that video and you're disgusted.
Yeah, that's wrong.
It didn't matter what happened before that, right? The fact that this guy was laying on the ground unconscious, and there was a police officer that was willing to continue to hold his knee on his neck. And then the hardest part for me was not only seeing that, and I would hate to see anybody in that, but not only seeing a black man who is in that position, but to see 3 other police officers not hold their colleague accountable, like that. And I'm about to get emotional talking about it. Like that to me is the hardest part. Wrong is wrong. Like there's no way you could sit there and watch that. And even as a police officer, and I'm so happy that I've seen so many police officers across the country speak out against that guy's action. You know, like that, it's sickening. So everybody saw that. So for a very slim time, America could agree on one thing. It's pretty messed up what happened, right? Yeah. So we could all agree on that. They can all agree maybe we should listen to some of the things that the black community specifically has been talking about when it comes to police brutality, because we saw it. Right. So you can't deny that now. So even though it's a disgusting, awful, horrible situation, it brings light to a lot of the injustices that black and brown people have been talking about and protesting about and screaming about and fighting against for decades. So now we're in a unique position where, okay, so now we've gotten a lot of allies. You know, we still have some people that are, you know, it's not about race, it's not about that. But for the most part, we're seeing the vast majority of our circles unite against that. So what do we do with that? What are we going to do? And that's the question. You know, one of the hashtags that I've seen is everybody versus racism. And I love that, because racism should be viewed, in my opinion, as a public health issue. It is not something that is just isolated to certain parts of this country. It's all over this world. It's global, you know, and you're seeing these protests and rallies in 20 plus countries. I mean, gosh, there was in China and in Germany and all these different areas, all these different places that they didn't know George Floyd. It didn't affect them. Like that specifically didn't affect them, but they're speaking out against things that they are experiencing in their own community. So I think it's important that right now in this time, since it's still, you know, this still recently happened, that we open our ear and we listen. We just listen to people who have experienced injustice, and listen to the people that have been hurt, and listen to the people that have been fighting tooth and nail to ensure that this doesn't happen to their kids. I think it's time to listen, and I think people are willing to do that now. The problem is we live in a culture where everybody wants to be right. And if you disagree with me, I now have to debate you because I, at the end of the day, have to be right. It's not what this is about. It's not about being right. We all know what happened to George Floyd was wrong. So it's not about being right. It's about how we can prevent that from happening. How can we come together as a country to ensure that our kids are growing up to see people for who they are, not the color on their skin. So right now, it's very important to listen. A month from now, 2 months from now, you should have been listening enough that, okay, now let's start to put together a plan. Okay, what does that look like here in our local community? What can I do to learn more about the Black Heritage Council, learn more about the Peace and Freedom Committee, learn more about, a lot of the things that are going on in our minority communities here locally. What can I do to learn more about that? Okay, now we've planned, we figure out ways that we can do that. Now, how can we strategize together? How can we coexist to make sure that we're working for the common goal and that everybody in the city is treated fairly and equally? And I think you have to start locally. And once that happens, you naturally start to see seeds being planted in these families. And now it doesn't become a local thing. Now it becomes a statewide thing. Then it becomes a national thing. So listening right now is like the most important thing, and try to hold back your judgments. And if you have a disagreement, don't turn it into, well, I'm not racist. Like it's not about that. It's about exposing our own biases so that we can be better people for our kids. I mean, that's life.
And I think a lot of conversations don't happen because as a white guy that doesn't feel like I'm racist, you're so terrified to have that title put on you.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's almost like, please don't ever let anybody call me a pedophile, and please don't ever let anybody call me racist. And it's almost like in that order. So there's a lot of fear around, what can I ask without sounding like dumb?
Yeah.
What can we talk about?
Yeah.
To where I get educated.
Yeah.
Because it is a very humbling position. I think, again, just that, like when you were dating, or the first time you asked Aaron out or Amanda out, you have that nervousness of what happens if I get rejected. It's like you have to be super humble and super hungry for understanding that person, that you're willing to subject yourself to the fear of, man, I really hope this goes okay.
Yeah. And
the value in the conversation, no matter how it turns out, is more important than just my quiet approval.
Yeah.
So I agree 100% with what you said, but how many people don't have the ability to have a Slater
have a relationship
in their life, to have that relationship that they can reach out and have those conversations? Because I was sharing with Aaron this morning. I said, I don't know why, but I thought so many times just to reach out to you and just say, hey man, but I didn't know why, just from the fear of it's stupid. I would have no problem texting you otherwise about anything else. But yet it was just this one situation. I was just frozen. I didn't know what to do, because it's just like you said. I mean, it was terrible. It was awful. And then all these things that nobody is really accustomed to seeing that's going on in the world. It's like you don't know what to do.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to highlight that it's okay to take your time to process things. We live in a culture right now where it's instant gratification, right? I saw an injustice, boom, I got to get on Twitter. I saw an injustice, boom, I got to make my Facebook dissertation, and so people know exactly how I feel. And it's we appreciate that. We appreciate you feeling like you have to get your voice out there, but it's okay to take time to process things. Not, like you said, not everybody has that person in their life that they can turn to and ask, but everybody has the opportunity to get on YouTube and look up people that have dealt with these injustices and see their side of things. They have the ability to look at different local organizations and to step outside of their comfort zone. That's the number one thing. You know what I mean? And the other thing is, don't overthink it. If you've got somebody you want to reach out to that may be dealing with an injustice, a simple, like, I was telling Erin, because she said something to me, I was like, all I had to do was say, I love you, bro. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's that I know.
Yeah.
Like, I know it's difficult for people to talk to. It's supposed to. It's supposed to be difficult. Yeah. And it's going to. And you don't have to have the answers, and I don't have to have the answers, but you care about me.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Just like if you were facing a hardship, you know, people who are dealing with death in their family and things like that, you never know what to say. Yeah. But you always like, hey, I'm thinking about you, I'm praying for you. Yeah. You know what I mean? Sure. So I think don't overthink it. Yeah. Like, you know, like it is awkward, but at the same time, if you know somebody's hurting and you don't know exactly how to answer or be there for them, just letting them know that you care. Yeah. You know, and then you take the time to formulate your own opinions and then have a conversation. You know, I think that's so important. I've got friends that I went to college with that come from very different backgrounds than me that are now police officers. And if you would have asked me a week ago if I could have talked to some of them, I would have said no, I couldn't, because I have personally seen things in my life when it comes to police and how they've treated people in my family that I used to have a preconceived notion. I took an implicit bias test. Then you can go online and do this through Princeton. They've got it. It's awesome. You can do it free. I took an implicit bias test, and the people I had a bias towards were police officers and white men. Think about it. I'm married to a white woman, right? Yeah. You know what I mean? But I had a bias towards them because of different things that I've seen. That doesn't mean I'm racist. That doesn't mean that, I hate white men or anything like that. It doesn't mean that. It means there are things intrinsically inside of me that I need to cope with in order to be the best person I can be. And since that day, I've done everything in my power to make sure that the number one thing I portray to not just white people but anybody is love. Like that's the number one thing, and it's okay to recognize those things and work on them. Yeah. Like it's, you know, and that's where people take it as, well, I'm racist. Oh my God, I can't believe it. Or, well, I'm not racist. My best friend's black. Like, okay, well, you don't count your black friends. Don't
discriminate your friends based on.
But it's okay to put yourself in those positions where you're just super uncomfortable. The fact that I've got uncles who are white. My family is the most biracial family I've ever been. Like, it's unreal. And it's like, I still have that. I had that because of different things that I've experienced, that my family has experienced, that my dad has experienced, that I've seen with my own eyes, like that shaped who I am. How can we work to improve? How can we work to get better? I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's what you want to do. Everybody wants to do that. For sure. I just went on a rant, but it's like, you know, don't feel bad for being white. Don't think you have to apologize. I'm sorry for what my ancestors did to you. Like, yeah, it sucks. Yeah. But like, don't feel bad for, like, it's all about how you're treating me now and how we can be allies to ensure that our kids, when Anchor and Rafe and Willa are running around, that they're the leaders in their schools. Yeah. Come to the city schools.
It's one heck of a backfield.
Yeah. City schools.
Jeremy done.
But when Anchor and Rafe and all of our kids are around each other, they're the leaders in their schools. Yeah. And, you know, they're like, oh, wow, like, we're not like these guys. He's what? You're from what background? You're from this background? It doesn't matter. Like, we're here for each other. That's all what we want. I'm going on a rant. I could talk about 8,000 different things, man. But some of the stuff, speaking from the heart, bro.
It's important in everybody's life. So this is one of the challenges with this particular issue. Is it, again, shame on me, but there's a little bit of the element that I've never directly seen that in Marion. And so it still feels far away.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about social injustices, the other part that I think is so important in educating ourselves, our friends, and in particular our children, the most important aspect of that, teaching them to identify some form of the social justice fight.
Yeah.
So one of the things I struggle with, especially as I look at, you know, my Caucasian peers from the land of Caucus, that's a Cat Williams shout out. I don't know if you've seen that School Days movie. It's probably the funniest bit ever.
Cat Williams.
That man has an 840 credit score right now. But that people are hopping on the bandwagon. Mm-hmm. And, it's people maybe I know or friends of mine or family members of mine or whatever. And the challenge or the frustration becomes, okay, what's the real act to then participate in moving this forward?
Yeah.
Or participating in some serious form of social justice. So one of the issues that I've committed some work to, or that I've been a part of, is obviously like drug recovery here locally. And I've seen a lot more. I've been to a lot more funerals with overdosed people that had fentanyl, or that the addiction eventually got the best of them, or whatever. And it's like, on the flip side, now obviously it's not like an Oprah show. Like, everybody gets a protest, but it's also like that's a really painful local issue.
Yeah.
And then it's like, now we have this issue as well. And it's almost like, okay, everybody should be outraged by this. Mm-hmm. Everybody should have an opinion. Everybody should have some form of involvement, some form of engagement. But it's also like, bro, have you not seen the tide lifting? Did you not see this coming?
Yeah.
Have you not been paying attention to the protected pedophiles we have in our country's history? The ingrained systemic racism we've had in our country. And on top of that, how the whole war on drugs has affected these impoverished communities and these silent people that are just getting killed from it, and what's happened to overdose deaths in the last 5 years compared to the entire history before that.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's a little bit of like, it's almost like overwhelming to look at the work that needs done, or the changes that need to have happened. So to me, and just trying to be very practical about it, it's like, man, I know I'm not going to go to like, Minneapolis and protest in Minneapolis. I can do that here locally in Marion. Mm-hmm. But what can I do to actually participate in saying, I'm going to help move a social injustice forward? Because, influencing DC seems so much bigger than, like what Jeremy Dunn can do.
Yeah. I mean, it's obviously, it starts with the listening. It starts with the conversation. It starts with utilizing your extended circle. Okay. So you may not be connected to some of the people that I'm connected to, but if you're really wanting to learn more, there are so many people in this community specifically that are doing some fantastic things to advance the minority community, the impoverished community here in the city. And it's like, we can utilize those resources. You can reach out to me and we can put you in contact and in touch with different groups, different things that are going on in the city. And I think that comes with being uncomfortable, right? It's uncomfortable to ask me like, hey, can you, like, for instance, I got a good friend, Johnny Jackson, who's now the diversity coordinator here with the Marion City Schools. Fantastic. He's a human, like, encyclopedia for anything Black. Like, it's like, I've learned so much from him in the short time. I've known him my whole life, but I've learned so much from him in the short time that I've been around him. And it's like, we have these people in our community that are fighting, and they're fighting in different ways. They're fighting for housing. They're fighting voter suppression. They're fighting getting people to the booths to vote. They're different things like that. And it's like, those are ways that you can directly help and support the local minority community. And it just comes from being willing to be a part of that conversation. I know moving forward, this is something I need to do, because I've had so many people reach out to me in the last couple weeks who are wanting to help. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of things that I'm involved in currently with Johnny and some others in the Marion City Schools that I think we can open the door to the community for these things. Mm-hmm. Aaron is now involved in just a local, that was started by Johnny and some others, just a local book club that you're reading books that are centered around social justice and racism and white privilege and different things, so you can grow. I mean, there are those things that are that simple that you could do, like joining a book club and being first willing to have those uncomfortable conversations, right? As much as we want to just dive right in and change the world, like, it's a process. Mm-hmm. And if you're recognizing different biases that you have, it's a process for you to to deal with those, right? Before you're comfortable to go out and say, like, I'm fighting the good fight. Like, you're growing as a person so you can be better for your family in this community. So I think that is just being willing to be a part of that extended circle and putting yourself in those uncomfortable situations. And like I said, that's something that I need to work on. It's like opening the door to my friends who want to know, you know what I mean? And welcome that. And now your circle of people that you may not have ever hung out with in the city or been around, it grows and grows and grows. And now instead of having, just like I've got black friends, white friends, whatever. Now you've got allies, right? Allies don't see it's not a there's not a racial thing when it comes. I almost said don't say
I know.
It's not a racial thing when it comes to allies. It is we're fighting for the same thing. Yeah. So I think that's something that I think every minority in this community has. White people and other people that want to learn more, and I think it's opening that invitation to making sure that they are able to see things that they may not have seen. Like some of the things that Johnny and many others are doing around housing, it's just like it's just fantastic work that you would never think about it. You know what I mean? But it's so important and vital to being willing to be a part of those groups and a part of that, because if we can change a lot of those things, and then you're changing, what we see from the police. You're changing what we see as far as over policing different minority areas and different things like that. So we could talk about that forever, but I think that's opening our extended circles to more people, you know what I mean, that are doing the work in the community, and opening that up to not just my small group of friends, opening up to everybody else. That's one of the things that I'm going to do personally to try to make sure that the people that are wanting to be a part, wanting to be allies, okay, well, let's do this together. So
one of the things for me that is one of the more difficult things is just being able to identify those places where like I need to work on, or where the community needs help. So like doing those things obviously would be that would go a long way to obviously help people such as myself, which are not near like I wake up, I go to the gym, I work, I hang out with my family.
Yeah.
And on Sundays I go to church.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much the extent of what I do. So like I'm I don't watch the news just because I don't like the negativity. So
brutal.
Yeah. So I mean like I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
By choice, but like obviously this the stuff that we've kind of just we're in the midst of now, like that's not cool.
No.
And so like anything that I can do, it's time for myself and people like myself to be able to step out and do some things, even if it is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because, things that we do and things that we say, obviously they carry weight.
Yeah.
So, like taking a, just like you talk about, like Willa and Rafe and Anchor, like taking that leadership role and stepping in, we're mid to early 30 guys here in a community, which, if we get involved and we do things, like it gets noticed, good and bad.
Absolutely.
So, but I mean, like that would be super helpful because, I just don't know these things.
Yeah. And I don't underestimate the value of impacting the home first. You know what I mean? Don't underestimate that value, because that's where it starts. Yeah. Racism isn't something that, you're born racist. Like I wasn't looking at Brett Payne when I met him in preschool and being like, oh, he's a white guy, I can't hang out with him. You know what I mean? I was like, yeah, he's got a really cool shirt on, I'm going to go talk to him. You know what I mean? Like, you're not born that way. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's like, racism is a taught thing. Hatred is a taught thing that whether it's shaped through experiences that people have, whatever it is, it's a taught thing that we can alleviate at home by raising, conscious kids that understand that, everybody just wants to be treated the same. Yeah. And I don't underestimate that. You know what I mean? Like, don't think that you're not doing anything. If you're teaching your kids, that it's okay to be around people that are different than you, and that we're in this household, we're accepting to everybody. Like that's a great start, because Rafe and Sophia and Anchor and hopefully Willa, she's special, but they're gonna one day be out active in the community, and just like we talk about our experiences shaped us, now their experiences are shaping them. So now they've grown up around people that are coming from so many different backgrounds, and now they're the culture changers. You know what I mean? And at the end of the day, like, that's what we want. So
yeah, I think for me, at least what I'm trying to get them to see without being like dad and have it feel forced. So I can be extremely overbearing. It's something I'm definitely trying to learn. And I think Brittany's excited when Sophia can kind of throw it in my face, because there's a lot of things that I'll probably listen to Sophia a little bit better than I will Brittany.
Yeah.
Just because, when Sophia goes, Mommy, why is Daddy being so mean today? Like, it just breaks your heart. Yeah. Versus my wife being like, hey, be nicer. And then, maybe we'll argue about something or whatever. Yeah. But it's like the innocence and the sensitivity that she approaches me with something, it definitely softens my willingness to listen and to lead. And with that, I'm trying to learn as a dad to teach them, when you recognize something in the realm of, just to use a broad term, a social injustice, you have to act. And if there's one extremely positive lesson I learned from my family, particularly my mom and dad, Mark and Doris Dunn, it was, you do something about it. Absolutely. You don't just sit around and talk about it. Yeah. You don't just get on the phone. And like now in today's time, like I believe, the social media post is a good first step, but if it's your only step, it's like buying a gym membership and never going. That's what you did. Yeah. You bought a gym membership and you never showed up at the gym. So don't get in front of the mirror and try to flex and act like you're any different until you've put in some work behind what you're passionate about or what you truly believe in. And I think for me, I think that would be something that would be pretty awesome to see a lot of people that have sat on the sidelines or have been kind of the armchair quarterback of social issues or political issues, right? They'll complain about Democrat, Republican, they'll complain about this, that, whatever it may be. But, don't forget, we're still Americans. Like we still have a lot of freedoms and a lot of influence that we can express. And honestly, the platform's there. Yeah. And it may not be a social media platform, may not be 1 million followers on Instagram, but I'm saying in your local world, in your local community, if there's anything I've learned, it's you can have a significant influence if you're just willing to not be a complete jerk. Yep. Not have some secret self-serving agenda. Yep. And just be willing to serve. Yeah. And so for me, in talking with you, I think that's why I try to harbor or think about it, because I've not been like socially, now privately, I've had conversations just about with everybody that I've sat down and had a conversation with recently about this. But socially, I've not really gone on like the attack of saying this or that or this or that. Yeah. But I think it's for a couple reasons. One, to your point, the time to process, because for me, I don't want to throw a single stone until I feel like I know what action I need to follow it up with, because then I just feel like it's empty lip service. Absolutely. And especially as my friend, as a brother, I don't want you to ever feel like, oh, Jeremy's just doing like, because I think in this environment, let me just put it this way, I feel like there's a lot of phonies out there right now. Absolutely. I feel like there's a lot of social justice warriors that can only type something. Yeah. They're not going to do anything about it. Yeah. And they're almost appeasing, not to use a church term, but like they're almost appeasing their own congregation. Yeah. Let me appease my followers. Let me appease my friends. Let me appease my black friend. Let me appease these people by showing my support. Yep. But then a month from right now, where are they at and what do they do? Exactly. And it may not be that particular issue or whatever, but it should be some issue. It should be. You can't tell me you can't look at what's going on, even in your local community, no matter where you're at, and not think you can't have an influence on somebody's life. Yeah. And if there's any form of encouragement, that's cool to see when you do have a peaceful protest and you do see people come together, or you do see those posts, is that like people are engaging on some level. Yeah. Now it's, okay, let's take the engagement a step further and not let this thing slip away. Yeah. Because it's almost like you can't control every teaching moment with your kids. You can't pick and choose that. I can't pick, this is the conversation I have with Anchor that finally makes him realize this principle.
Yeah.
And trust me, I have those moments in my life where it's completely unexplainable. Grace of God, probably about the only way I can describe it. But, something sunk in and Jeremy changed as a human being.
Yeah.
And I'm forever thankful for that. But I had a lot of seeds, a lot of influence up to that point. This to me feels like in our culture, in the conversation with people, it seems like a lot of people are opening up and waking up to that. So what do you think this situation is unique in that standpoint? And what do you think has made that unique where in the past it's just been this, weak news run, blurb, a little bit of outrage, and then it goes away.
So I was the same way. There were a lot of people who were speaking out on social media, and I really had to think about the platform that I have. I really had to, more importantly, I had to think about what it meant to me as a young black man that is seen as a leader in this community, that is a leader of young men. I really had to process that before I could say anything, because I was livid, I was militant, and I was struggling like big time. I was really struggling with this situation. But I've seen this before, and I've seen the same exact thing happen. And it's almost like, in 2016 when it happened, when the first I Can't Breathe situation happened with Eric Garner, even all the way back to the LA riots with Rodney King and everything like that, you see all these different injustices, and people unite and say like, hey, we are in this together. And then you don't hear from them. And it's like, where you at? You know what I mean? And that's why I needed to take time. I wanted to see how authentic it was. I wanted to see how many, and you're probably going to feel bad about this, but I wanted to see how many people were going to reach out to you.
Yeah.
Right? Because in 2016, when we were dealing with the same exact thing, and I was speaking out and trying to make sure that I was educating our young men, I didn't get a text, I didn't get a phone call or anything, right? So I wanted to see like, okay, how are people dealing with this? How are who I perceive as my allies dealing with this? And seeing how many people reached out, and seeing people, I had a friend of mine who's a prison guard, and I feel COVID-19 and how it has affected our prisons here, our jail system here in Marion. I just sent him a text, told him I'm praying for you, brother. Like this is real. And I you've got to go into work every day knowing you're going into a situation where you could contract a disease that is killing people. And I just sent him a text, brother, I love you. I'm praying for you. I'm praying for protection over your life. And he appreciated that and everything. Literally 2 days after this happens, he sends me a text and says, brother, a few weeks ago, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. You reached out to me, sending your prayers and your thoughts with me as I went into work every day. Now I'm returning it. I'm returning the favor as a brother of somebody that I respect and I want to stand beside every single day. I want to check on you as a black man. And I never in a million years would have thought, he's a good friend of mine, and but I never would have thought I would have received that message. And like that made a huge impact on me. So for me to see like, okay, people are taking this serious now. What are things that we can do to make sure that this doesn't fizzle out? You know what I mean? And I think we have a unique opportunity right now to really present a lot of the things that have been going on in the African American, the black community for so long. You know what I mean? People are willing to listen, and now it's time to like, okay, so here's the things that we want to see change. Here's why we want to see them change. What can we do together? And we'll see in a month. We'll see in 2 months. Yeah. We'll see around election time. We'll see a year from now if those same people who are trying to be our allies now will actually follow through. You know what I mean? But we've seen it before, and you worry about that. That's always in the back of your head. Like, this is just going to be an afterthought.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there is definitely concern with that. Do I think this specific situation is different? Like I said earlier, people saw how disgusting this was.
Yeah.
Did you watch the video?
I mean? Yeah.
Did you watch the video?
I saw the thumbnail and I knew what it was, and I was not watching.
Yeah.
I can't watch. No, there's no way.
Yeah, it was,
and especially once I read the narrative about him even
Terrible.
crying for mom, and mom's been deceased.
Yeah. And
that's holy cow.
That was, it was definitely hurtful. So I think things are trending in the right direction to fight for real change.
Yeah.
But will we keep that same energy?
Yeah, you can't.
Months from now. Like, that's my concern. But that's our job.
Yeah.
That's my job to make sure that doesn't happen. That's my job to hold my friends accountable who said that you wanted to be a part of a change, and present them with opportunities to make sure that, hey, you said this. You said you want to be a part of a change. We have an opportunity to do something. Here's some different things that we're doing. I need your support. I need your support. And I think it's so important that we don't lose sight of the fact that we have to hold each other accountable to that. Just like the police officers have to hold each other accountable for their actions. Just like teachers have to hold each other accountable for what they're bringing every day in the classroom. Just like you guys have to hold each other accountable for what you guys are doing in the workforce. The same thing happens when we've created these allies and the fight against racism. You said this. Now, what are you doing? You know what I mean? And don't be silent about it. Speak out. If you've got a friend that is saying some things that are derogatory, call them out on it right now. We don't stand for that, because on the football field, we will. When you're thinking about the culture, when you're thinking about, sorry, right?
My fault. No.
Yeah.
When
it was water.
When you're thinking about changing the culture, and I always take things to sports, right? You hear so many sports teams and leaders and coaches say, that's not the way we do things around here, right? When somebody's being lazy, when somebody's being tired, or not tired, but just not doing the work, somebody's not stepping up, or somebody wants to be an individual, one of the most common things that is said is, that is not how we do things around here. So when are we going to say that about racism? When are we going to say, well, I told my buddy a black joke the other day and it was so funny. Hey, I'm going to tell you this joke. It's a little racist, but it's funny. Yeah. Like, when are we going to be like, hey, I'm an American. That's not how we do things, man.
That's good.
When are we going to do that? And there's not been enough people that have done that. And I could go on and on about the experiences that I've had. I've been called the N-word blatantly on football fields, at parties, and just random places. And I've been with white friends, and sometimes I was typically the only black guy, and I've literally had people not come to my defense. Now think about being the only black person in a situation, and somebody says something racist to you, and your friends don't come to your back. They don't have your back. Well, I'm not friends with them anymore, right? But I've also been at places where people that I have no clue who they are, zero clue, caught wind that they called my wife or girlfriend at the time an N-word lover, and literally were willing to go to jail to beat the mess out of somebody to say that is not how you treat people. When are we going to get to that level? You know what I mean? That's the real question. And everybody's been around, people who have said things and or still use the term colored or different things like that. When are we going to be willing to say, it's not right? That's not right. You need to stop doing that. That's not how we do things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And even if we're not saying, like, even if you feel like you can't affect that as a whole, you can do that in your family.
100%.
You catch your kid or your significant other saying something that they shouldn't. Hey, that's not how the Coopers do it. That's not how the Slaters do it. That's not who we are. And until we get to that point, we have a long way to go. But that's the goal. And that's why I was saying don't make yourself feel bad because you're not super active in the community. You can change those things at home and be like, hey, that's not the way the Coopers are going to do it. And I think that's where we want to go. And not everybody's willing to do that yet. And it's going to take being uncomfortable. It's going to take being exposed to different things. But that's the end goal, man. To say in America, that's not how we do it. Until we get there, we got to fight the good fight.
So when it comes to culture and music, particularly looking at the significant group of young men that you lead.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the way, rap, hip hop, current athletes use verbiage, portray themselves, talk about things or get in trouble with certain things. Do you feel like it helps promote the conversation or people coming together, or do you feel like it's almost like a constant kind of back and forth?
I think it's a back and forth. There was a point in time where I did feel like it helped promote that. It gave certain people power to use a word, and we're talking about the N word, to use a word that is still used today to describe and to degrade Black people, right? But then I started to research it a little bit, and I started to see the other side of things. And, the Black community, a lot of people in the Black community took a word that was used to describe us, to degrade us, and turned it into a term of endearment, right? So now that word doesn't carry the same weight. But if you're using it in a way that is derogatory towards me, then all these thoughts of what our ancestors and what people in the civil rights movement, what our parents dealt with, it triggers something, right? So I think do I use that word? No, I don't. I've done everything I can to try to eliminate that word from my vocabulary. Do I listen to music that uses that word? Yes, I do. I'm not going to lie. Some of the best music I've ever heard has used that word. But I think it's important for us to not change what we're trying to fight against, right? We're trying to fight against racism, and that we're trying to fight against these injustices. And it's almost like people always have to have a but. Well, I should be able to use that word because you use it. I should be able to use that word because I hang around all Black people and they use it to call each other that. So I have the freedom to say that, or, with everything going on, well, police brutality is an issue in the Black community. Yeah, but what about Black on Black crime? You know what I mean? Like, people don't understand that is just a way to distract you of what we're trying to fight against. There are people out there in the Black community that are working every day to ensure that we aren't using that word in our community, right? There are people every day that are out there that are fighting tooth and nail. It's like I was telling you before we came on air, to destroy, intervene, and prevent urban gun violence. And I think when we do that, we are undermining so many people who are giving their life. They're giving their life to fight these injustices within our own community. The news isn't airing that stuff. We all know that. We're all what's the word I used the other day? We want to watch TV that lines up with our beliefs, right? We all have that bias, right? Yeah. If you're a Democrat, you know what channels you're going to turn to. Yeah. If you're a liberal or if you're a Republican, you know what channels you're going to turn to. And I think that if we can get to the point where we stop searching for that but, well, what about this in the Black community? But what about that? It's like, stop getting distracted. What are we fighting against, right? And that's what I always tell people. Are we working every day, or are people trying to eliminate that word from our culture? Yeah, there are. If I were to say that word around my dad, if I'm using it as a term of endearment towards my dad might punch me in my face. Graduated high school in 1972. If I said that around my 95 or 93-year-old grandma, she'd probably kick me out of the house, right? Think about what she's faced, Yeah. But I think the younger culture has turned it into something that to bring less value to that word. Like if somebody was to use that word against me, it doesn't hold the same power. So I just think people get distracted from what we're really trying to fight. Yeah. Because there are people that are working tooth and nail to make sure that the Black community is taking care of the Black community. And it just bothers me. That always turns into the conversation. Well, you use this word, or there's Black on Black crime, or there's this or there's that, and you're just undermining so many people that are literally giving their life to make sure that we have the same rights and freedoms as everybody else in this country. And in order for us to do that, we have to take care of ourselves. We have to take care of our own. And people just get too distracted when it comes to. I know that was like a far-reaching way to take that conversation with the question you asked, but like let's not get distracted from what we're fighting against. We're fighting against racism, and we are working tooth and nail every single day to make sure we're improving ourselves in the Black community as well. And that shouldn't be undermined.
Well, it's funny. So Anchor's 4, he's going through this period in time where when he gets a consequence for a bad decision, and I, come down on him in whatever way or format I do that, he'll pout and he'll get upset with me. And then he'll kind of like give me the cold shoulder or, only pay attention to mom. I'm like, hey, buddy, what's going on? He goes, well, you got mad at me. And I have to explain to him, like, dude, you acted first and you get a consequence when you act out of line. I think to what you're saying, it's a lot of the same thing. It's like, well, hold up. We didn't want this word.
No.
We weren't asking. You gave it to us. We took it back.
Yeah.
And now you're trying to figure. It's almost like now you want to play with it again. Like now you want to jump in. It's like no.
Exactly.
You have to understand there's some content, and that's where like I haven't been there. Therefore, I definitely should try to be mildly emotionally intelligent enough to understand I haven't experienced it.
Yeah.
Because if I ever was called that in my youth, by a black guy or a white guy, that it would be like a cool thing. Oh snap! I'm cool now.
Yeah,
they called me that.
Yeah,
which I know obviously with football and a lot of those younger players that don't understand the full scope of what they're doing or their actions.
Yeah,
that's almost how they're going to interact.
Yeah.
So it's like, hold on, let's educate a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's teach a little bit. Let's take this moment not just to say like no, but let's really explain to them the magnetism of what's going on with this.
Yeah.
So with your older family members, have you talked to any of them that maybe were around for Dr. King or remember any of that?
Yeah, so I've talked to quite a few people. I talked to my dad specifically. My dad is, he's the greatest man I've ever known. And he has a completely different worldview because of his experiences. You're talking about a guy who was denied buying a car that he was willing to pay $2,000 more for in the 60s because he was black. Think about that. He still tells that story to this day. And it happened here in Marion.
Well, if he ever wants to buy one of my cars, it'd be $2,000 more.
Yeah,
I'll take his money.
My dad was, because when my dad turned 18, like my dad's literally worked since his whole life. He's 66 now. He's just, you're talking 50 plus years of just busting his butt. Mm-hmm. And he's always been about saving money. And he saved up enough money that he told this guy on the car lot, I'll never forget this story, he tells it all the time, that he went to this car lot and he told this guy, nobody's going to buy this car because it's too expensive. I'm going to buy it. And the guy didn't think anything of it. He was a little young, poor black kid. He's not going to buy it. Well, sure enough, my dad busted his butt to save up for this car, and he went to buy it and originally offered the guy like $500 to $1,000 more than what he was asking for. And the guy said, no, I got somebody that's going to come buy it. Someone else, man. Dad came back like a week after. Car's still there. Guy told him that, so he had somebody coming to buy it. He's like, well, I'll pay you X amount of dollars. Well, I think somebody's coming to buy it today. Right? So he offered more money than what it actually sold for. Think about that. Mm-hmm. So his worldview is completely different than what I've ever experienced. Mm-hmm. But he's been the one person I've really tried to lean on the most because, I have a responsibility to him to uphold the values of our family. Garrett and I both do. And, I'm getting emotional talking about my dad. I'm not going to let him down. Mm-hmm. And I'm speaking out about these things because if I don't, I feel like I'm letting him down. Mm-hmm. And I never want to do that. You know what I mean? And based on what he's dealt with in his life and what I've seen him deal with in his life, I'm doing my family a disservice if I don't fight for what I feel in my heart is right. Mm-hmm. Because of everything he had to endure, everything my grandmother was 93. Yeah. Think about that. She's from Milledgeville, Georgia. Yeah. Right? She came to Ohio to get away from the things she was dealing with in the South. Yeah. Think about that.
Her grandparents were probably slaves.
Yeah.
She's from that area.
Think about that. She's 93 and it's sharp as a tack. I mean, she can remember so many different things, and it's like I have a responsibility to the Slater name to make sure that I'm speaking out against that. And the crazy thing is, I feel like my wife now feels that responsibility too. Not only to me, but to my dad and my grandmother and my uncles, who have literally had to deal with so much. And it's not just my family, it's other people in this community too. There's other people in this community who have been fighting, whether there were people listening. They were fighting the good fight no matter what, and nobody would listen. And they were fighting for equality for everybody to be treated fairly, for black and brown people to have the same access to different things. Now, after all these years, people want to listen to them. Like, imagine how that would make you feel. You know, you've been an activist your whole life, and I've been fighting for these things, but now because of one video, now you want to listen. If that doesn't tell you that racism exists in this country, I don't know what else will, right? Turning a blind eye to things and being silent about it is just as bad as being a blatant racist.
Right.
It truly is. Yeah. But now you want to listen to me, right? So when you see people, and this is one of the things my dad told me, or we talked about, you know, there was a lot of riots and different things that happen. When you see black people, when you see these protesters that are turning from the protests into the riots, and the riots are turning into looting. So there's 3 different phases to this, right? There's 3 different phases to it. We know, even though the news may not tell you this, the vast majority of the people that are out there are protesting peacefully. You know, and what do people like to post? They want to post Dr. King. Well, Dr. King wouldn't stand for this. Dr. King also said, you know, riots are the voice of the unheard, right? So think about that. So now there's 3 phases of this. There's protests, there's the riots, and there's the looting. Do I condone, or does the Slater family, or do the majority of black people condone the rioting and the looting? No. Are we necessarily going to speak out and be vehemently against it? No. Why? Because for decades we tried to tell you that these things were going on, and you didn't listen to one thing. But now you want to? Why would I tell these young people who feel the same way I feel not to protest, not to get in a police officer's face, not to say I'm going to go get, you know, all these gun certifications so I can be armed to carry and all that. Why would I tell them not to go do that when they've been fighting for these things for so long? You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, that's, people don't think about that. And that goes to show that we don't like to listen, that we don't have empathy, that we don't care about what you're doing as long as you're shutting up and dribbling, right? Like what that woman said to LeBron James. Well, we don't really care as long as you're not affecting what we're trying to do. As long as you're not trying to mess with my money, right? And that's a problem. So when you see these riots and you see people looting, like, do the majority of black people condone the looting? Heck no. Some people are taking advantage of this. Yeah. And we all know that. Yeah. But damn it, we tried to tell you for so long that this is going on, and you didn't listen to me.
Who's the person that's going to speak out about the number of white people that take advantage of disability? Are you not looting? You're looting my tax dollars. Now, thankfully, nobody's ever tried to loot my house. And that's a blessing. Yeah. But my tax dollars have been looted by people that look just like me, that have a physical ability of working, that choose not to game the system. And so it's like, we're not going to speak out about that. Yeah. So we have disenfranchised, impoverished people that are acting out. Yeah. And I don't agree with it, but I understand it. Yeah. I understand it. Yeah. Because on the flip side, we can do a whole lot of workman's comps, audits, investigations, and we can find a whole slew of people. Absolutely. That are stealing. Stealing. There's no doubt about it. For years, stealing. Yeah. But yet we don't want to talk about that. We don't want to talk about it. So in that, with people that you see that, how do you emotionally check yourself to say, okay, you can't just get mad at people. Nobody's going to listen to a frustrated leader. Yeah. how do you then, how do you try to settle your emotion to say, okay, here's how I work through kind of, again, football's played with a lot of aggression.
Yeah.
So how do you balance, you can be way too aggressive and not get anything done.
Yeah.
But you do need to carry some of that emotion with you as well.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've been trying to work through is, because I personally, I work from a pure place of love. And I've been trying to work tooth and nail to make sure that I stick to that. And, it's obviously our faith. That's the center of our faith is the word love. So I really try to work from that aspect, and I try to portray that same thing to the young people that I may have an influence on, that I may impact. I don't try to take away from how they want to voice their opinion. That's like the fine line that I have to walk. Mm-hmm. I may not condone what they're doing or the violence towards police. I don't condone that at all. And I will talk to people personally about that and be like, look, we've got bigger things that we're trying to fight. We've got bigger things that we're trying to fight. That cop that you're throwing that thing at, or that person that you're upset with, that you're wanting to fight right now, you don't even know them. Mm-hmm. Right? We've got bigger things that we're trying to fight. How can we mobilize and make sure that we're fighting towards justice, right? So that's my way of trying to channel that anger. I can't stand seeing so many people just breaking windows and being violent, and the exploitation that's happening to these riots, and it's being politicized, and it's turning to black people versus police when it should be everybody versus racism. And we can't lose sight of that. Mm-hmm. So I said in my Facebook post the other day, do not get distracted from what we're fighting against. It's not me versus the police. It's me versus how that guy may have been raised. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Yeah. How can we channel that anger and do that? So that's the way that I try to do it. I try to operate from a place of love. So my actions and what I'm doing is being portrayed to my young people that may look up to me. So they're seeing how Coach Slater's reacting to this, right? So now maybe in their mind they think like, okay, like that's the maybe that's the responsible. Well, I hate even saying that. Maybe that's the way that I should go about it too. But if they're angry, I want them to voice their opinions, but I want to make sure we're giving them the avenues to truly create and affect change, right? So that's tough. That's tough to do. And I don't know if our young people now can get militant really quick. You know what I mean? And they could F this, like, mm-hmm. I'm getting violent. I'm frustrated. My family's had to deal with this too long. I'm mad. So it's like really trying to make sure that we can use that anger that you have that's pent up in here to truly affect change, so that 20 years from now, when you're a dad, your daughter, your son doesn't have to deal with the same things that our grandfathers, that my father had to deal with. You know what I mean? And it's freaking tough. Like it's hard. It's hard to do. I've had a conversation with a former player about that the other day. He's been taking part in the protests that have been going on in Columbus, Ohio, and he's walking that fine line. He sees different things. He's got a different view of things. He's seen things happen to people in his family that he does want to be like super militant, right? But that also is a reflection of being black in America, right? There's so many different things that we have to deal with that you may not even think we have to deal with, right? Like for me personally, like having to speak out on social injustices, and having to be the first African American football coach in Harding history, like there's a lot of responsibility to that, and it sucks at times, but it's not something that I take lightly. And being black, and there's so many other African Americans, black Americans who are dealing with so many other things, being the first to graduate from college, or being the first to get out of their neighborhood and do something, you know what I mean? Like there's so many different things that it's just like, man, like that is tough. And now I have to worry about, if I get pulled over, what if my hands aren't on the steering wheel? What if I reach for the glove box before the police officer tells me I can reach for the glove box? Now I have to think about that. Okay, now you want me to go to, the schools in inner cities may not be up to par, so now I'm going to go to a school in the suburb. Well, now I'm the only black kid in the school, so now I'm the token black kid. So now if somebody says something racist, do I speak up and put a target on myself and I'm the only one here? Or do I kind of let it go? You know what I mean? Like, those are different things that black people have to deal with on a daily basis that people don't take into account, that it can be perceived in different ways within the own black community and within the white community as well. And there's a fine line, and I think how you deal with these injustices and how you protest is just like a microcosm of how black people have to navigate through life every single day. And people fail to realize that, or they don't want to realize that. Just lace up your bootstraps and get yourself out of these situations. Like, it's not that simple.
No.
It's not that simple.
No, not at all.
So, sorry.
No, that's great.
Dude, getting fired up, man.
It's great.
Yeah.
I love
it. Yeah. Love hearing the heart, honestly, and just the perspective. It's, as we're going through this and, hearing you talk and just thinking, two people came to mind immediately. So as soon as we're done here, I'm going to send them a text because I didn't.
Yeah.
So that's something that I felt convicted that I need to do.
Yeah.
Because just like you said, I mean, if I'm not going to say anything, might as well be part of the problem.
Yeah.
And it's like, that was really convicting me.
Yeah.
Thanks.
No, I'm sorry. Like, hey, I'm not sorry.
But that's the value in the conversation.
Yeah.
Because like, for me, you obviously think about, like, well, what really matters? Yeah. And I never even gave it a thought or even thought about it in terms like that.
Well, I don't think in those terms either.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's because that's not, again, culture, right? Trying to get out of your own world and understand what's happening.
Well, that's the thing.
To be engaged.
But the other thing is too, and this is okay. You just said get out of your own world. Okay, try to put in your own world. Try to envision something similar to what that person may be going through, right? People are upset when people say Black Lives Matter, okay? Which is like, it's just like banging your head up against the wall. Like, it's just, look, guys, we're not freaking saying that you don't matter. But if there's something going on in a certain community that needs addressed, if you are a decent human being, you will support whatever it is that they're trying to do to make sure that whatever that issue is doesn't happen anymore, right? Yeah. That's all we are saying. It's not, look, you guys matter. My wife matters, yes, white people, Asian, Latino, everybody matters. We know that. But if there's an issue, it needs to be addressed, right? So, Black Lives Matter. You don't like the way people say that. It's all lives matter. Okay, fine. Put yourself in a position to where you need to portray that something in your life matters, right? Put your son in that position, right? Are you going to sit here and say, well, everybody's son matters? Well, yeah, of course, but this is a direct issue. It's my freaking child.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or take certain words out. You know what I mean? Like, find a way to put yourself in that person's shoes, to truly try to gain an understanding. I read something the other day, and it was so profound. And it was just like, so eye-opening. There are so many people that speak out against Black Lives Matter, right? They speak out against the riots and the protests, right? They don't look into the fact that the majority of the black community does not necessarily agree with the riots and the looting. We just want equality. We want justice. I hate saying equality. I hate saying equity. We want justice, right? That's where we're all trying to get justice.
Yeah.
Think about it from an educational lens, okay? I'm a teacher. I'm an intervention specialist. I have my master's in special education. Special education is my life. If a kid, think about an elementary school kid, a kindergartner, a first grader, second grader, we're in class one day and little Johnny just loses his mind, right? He just loses it to the point that we have to evacuate the classroom, right? Little Johnny's throwing chairs, like he is upset. In the educational world, we'll look at that kid and say, what resources can we get this student to make sure that this doesn't happen again? Right? Yeah. And we will freaking give little Johnny every wraparound service. He still may get disciplined, but we'll give him every wraparound service to make sure that he can work every single day to alleviate that behavior so he can function within that classroom and that he can succeed at the highest level. Yep. Right? We'll do it. What's the difference? What's the difference from black people screaming for justice? What's the difference between somebody, a young black person who's so frustrated that these things are going on, he throws a brick through the window? Mm-hmm. It's a difference. It's called trauma, right? Mm-hmm. All trauma matters, right? Yeah. So if it's trauma, how can we help that trauma, right? We have people that are living in poverty. We fight tooth and nail to make sure that we help those people, right? Who's the most impoverished racial group in the country? Black people, right? Percentage-wise, not raw numbers, percentage-wise, right? You want to help impoverished people, you want to help black people, right? You want to help fight abortion. You're pro-life and you're against abortion. Which community is affected by abortion the most? Black people. It all stems around poverty, right? So now you're sitting here thinking, like, well, all lives matter. Well, all the thoughts that you have in your head, they kind of trend towards helping the black community. So what's wrong with that? Yeah. What's wrong with like, hey, I didn't think about that. Maybe I need to help. You have a problem with single women, single parents, right? Fatherless homes. What community needs the most support when it comes to that? And I hate saying it, it's the black community, right? Single parent homes are rampant in the black community. If you care about those things, then be willing to speak out against it. It's not a political thing, it's a human decency thing. Mm-hmm. You know? We're willing to do it if it affects, we're willing to fight tooth and nail, as we should, people who are battling addiction and drug abuse and opiate crisis and different things. Like, we should fight tooth and nail, okay? We should also fight tooth and nail for people who are experiencing injustice, because injustice is it's not something that is an isolated thing. It is something that has been rampant in this country for so long, and it's like, I just get so frustrated hearing and seeing people who just don't want to be a part of the solution. Like, why would you not want to be a part of the solution? Like, why? Why wouldn't you want to at least listen? Black people have had the same rights as everybody else for 56 years. Think about that. Black people have had the same rights as everybody for 56 years. Do you think, as old as this country is, do you think we're going to have it figured out in 56 years? Heck no. Yeah. But be willing to accept the fact that we don't have it figured out. And what can we do to help you? You talked about Cat Williams, right? Mm-hmm. And one of his stand-ups, he's on the phone and he calls somebody and he says, it was a white woman that answered, and he said, I tell you what, when you call a white person and you say like, I must have the wrong number. Well, no, it's a 0, not a 9. Well, call me back. We're going to get this thing figured out. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, how hard is it to help people, right? Like, it's just so asinine that it's a freaking problem. But people bring politics into it. People bring their biases into it, and they don't want to change. They're not willing to change, and it's just it's frustrating that it takes something like this for people to finally recognize a lot of the things that have been affecting black and brown people in this country. And it's like sad. Yeah, I keep going on tangents, guys. I'm sorry, but it's just it's frustrating. And Aaron told me to try to keep myself in check. But man, it's just so It's so tough. And the fact that, and it's in this Marin Star article today that, I spoke out against what happened to Ahmaud Arbery, and I talked about, white privilege. It's something that I've experienced and I've seen, and many of my friends have experienced it as well. And it's not saying that anybody should feel bad for being white. It's like, there's a good chance you may have had a hand up in certain situations, right? And I had a parent of a player, or a former player, that said they were going to report me to the school board because I spoke out on a social injustice. 2020. If I don't speak out on that social injustice, I'm doing my team, not just the black kids, I'm doing my team a disservice. I'm doing my team a disservice. And it's like, if that doesn't show you that racism is real, if that doesn't show you that people are so ignorant and don't want to change and want things to just be how they used to be and just shut up and dribble and don't say anything, it's like, come on. Like, that's disgusting. 2020. And you want to report me and my staff to the school board because we spoke out on a social injustice, because we want Ahmaud Arbery's family to experience justice for their child who was brutally killed. Okay. We got a long way to go.
Yeah.
Sorry. It's like so frustrating.
And the convenience of protecting rights. So again, going back to the white privilege conversation, the convenience of protecting my willingness to have freedom of speech to say, I don't like what you did, so now I'm going to report you, versus also understanding that you have the right to your freedom to say what you feel like you need to say.
Yeah.
Which I also think in this time is it's a little bit scary, kind of what's happening with it. Ultimately, passion and change, I think, connects to pain. And I think that's one of the huge things that, you go back to, let's say, Rodney King.
Yeah.
So camcorders being a common part of the profession, or being more prevalent, and then now all of a sudden you're not just reading about it, but you're seeing it.
Yeah.
And now with how advanced phones are, you're not just seeing it in extreme quality, but you're also hearing it.
Yeah.
And the pain of that moment.
And it's being shared to millions.
And it's being shared to millions. So it's also a universal communication.
Yeah.
It's not, there's not too many more facts that can be manipulated when you have that kind of communication or that kind of exposure. But the connection to pain.
Yeah.
And to me, I think that's where I see a lot of people get weak, is because a lot of those things that you have to fight, you have to be willing to be connected to pain on a regular basis.
Yeah. And
be willing to endure those. Like Dr. King, so I was just looking it up just because I was curious. I've heard some different things, but every report I can find basically says the dude died with no money.
Yeah. Think about that.
Arguably top 10 most influential people to ever step foot on planet Earth.
Yeah.
And this dude had to get money raised after he died.
Yeah.
To support his family and get his kids through college.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Took all of his Nobel Peace Prize winnings and gave it right back to the civil rights movement. This guy, for anybody that looks at I Have a Dream or looks at these snapshots of him and thinks he was on some elevated, no, this dude was so connected to the pain.
Yeah.
Lived in the pain.
Yeah.
Embraced it when he probably knew, here's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
The mountaintop speech. Oh my gosh. That dude he was in a different dimension.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's but so connected to the pain.
Yeah.
You look at the fights of, the young men that you deal with or the situations you've been a part of, not just trying to, and this is the challenge. In our culture right now, we can insulate ourselves so thick by what we follow, by who we interact with, by what we do, by the jobs that we go pursue. We have so much basically fluidity with our economy, our culture, that we can insulate. We can say, here's exactly what I want to do. Here's exactly what I want to be exposed to. And I'm going to insulate myself so I don't have to worry about a thing.
Yeah.
And that's a terrible way to live.
It's awful.
Because you're wasting everything God gave you to use.
Yeah.
This life is not about just insulating yourself on what you value and your own comfort, which is, I think, is a huge challenge. It's so easy to be comfortable right now that we lose that sense of, and isolated, we lose that sense of tribe, we lose that sense of influence, and like what you were talking about with your dad, like that sense of how I live my life matters.
Yeah.
And it matters at a very important level how I make just about every decision in my life.
Yeah.
And so back to what can we do? Me personally, like in just thinking about it or trying to think about it or trying to understand it, I think the ultimate challenge is discover what you're passionate about. Find either a part in this or a part of it that you're passionate about. Because Black Lives Matter may not be, let's say, a protest. It may be something like some of the other things you've highlighted. It may be an after-school program where you care about education, you care about, impoverished students, and so you want to get involved in that way. I mean, that you're supporting it in that way. Find a way to connect to the pain. So when I say connect to the pain, what I'm really saying is find a way to connect to other people that aren't as privileged as you and get in their crap and get in their junk and be supportive of it.
Yeah. And the thing is, a lot of people are willing to get in the pain if it's doesn't center around race. You know what I mean? Like, for instance, the Marion City Schools did a Bridges Out of Poverty training. Fantastic training. And giving our current situation that a lot of our students are living in, it's a very needed training. Like, there's no doubt about it. And many people run left and right to sign up for those things because they wanted to experience it. They wanted to understand more. But when are we going to look at race that same way? And I think that is to me, that is the next steps. And as far as like what are we doing, like find what you're passionate about. Like for me personally, like I've really had to take a look back and not just say like, well, because of the position I'm in and the people that I can influence, like I'm just going to speak out on this shit, on these things and be the leader that my players need me to be. Like it's more than that. So what am I passionate about? What am I going to do? So that's Aaron. You can ask Aaron this. I've been up until like 2-3 a.m. the last like 2 weeks, and it's trying to figure out, okay, what is it specifically that I want to do that can help this? And one of these things is speaking out. You know what I mean? It's one of the reasons why I agreed to do this. I personally did not want to come talk about this, but I felt an obligation to. But the other thing is to have people dive deeper into those statistics that people like to throw around. So when people talk about black on black crime, and I hate that term, try to use urban gun violence, when they point to those things, okay, so provide people with those resources. Okay, well, you pointed that out, so clearly you have a want. You brought that stat up, so you clearly have a want to help out. Hey, here's this resource. Take a look at it. See what some of these people in these communities are doing. How can you help them? And I try to do the same thing with a lot of things that are going on in my community and a lot of the things that will affect my students the most. You know what I mean? And it's like finding those things you're passionate about within that pain, like you said, and diving deep into it. You're not one person is going to solve racism. It's going to be a collective effort from everybody. And if each person can find that thing they're passionate about that can help fight against social injustice, gosh, man, could you imagine? Could you imagine? Maybe you're passionate about fighting for rights for the LGBTQ community. There's so many people within that community that are facing injustices every single day. Maybe you're passionate about fostering. We know some awesome people that are foster parents, and maybe you're passionate about providing young black kids with the opportunity to be in a household where they have a father. You know what I mean? Maybe that's something, look into that. Maybe that's something that you can figure out, like, this is where my niche is. This is how I can help combat this disease. And that's okay. Like, find your niche, excel in your niche, give everything you have in your niche, and now all these allies are truly fighting against racism. And that's so, I'm glad you said that, man. That was very powerful. Like, that's so true. Being able to find exactly what it is that you want to do, what your family can do, and what you can do. Use your talents, you know what I mean? You guys are all great with money. You two are great with money. I've talked to you about my finances plenty of times, and you've helped me get on track with that stuff. You're huge into real estate. Well, maybe it's starting, an internship where you're bringing specifically somebody who's minority on to expose them to different things that they may not get. I know that sometimes people are like, well, that's just a handout. Is it a handout, or are you wanting to help a community? You know what I mean? Those are things that we can really, truly look at.
Well, you can look at it as your own responsibility for compensating for your failure to your local society.
Yeah.
I have an accountability to it.
Yeah.
And that's a much tougher pill to swallow when I look in the mirror and I say, this is partly my fault for not being a stronger leader and influence within my local community.
Yeah.
It's much harder to have that conversation than it is to say, oh, I'm going to tweet and blame.
Yeah.
I'm blame you. No,
stop playing the blame game. Yeah. Just get to work.
Yeah, there you go.
That's it.
We're definitely in a great position now where we can all take, we all have an opportunity to make a difference or to make an impact. We're not. So, so hopefully most of us take that opportunity and they do something.
Yeah, I agree 100%, man. Be willing to have those uncomfortable conversations. I was up late last night talking to a police officer friend of mine. I wanted his perspective. I don't agree with a lot of the stuff that he talks about, but I wanted to know what he felt needed to change in the police community. What he felt needed to change in the community in general. And it was eye-opening. And it's being able to have that discourse. We're lucky here in town that we have some really, from my experience and what I've seen, some really great police officers that are truly wanting to make an impact. They've invested in doing that. You know what I mean? They've put the money that they've been able to receive towards making a change. And I, being willing to have those uncomfortable conversations is going to go such a long way for us. And I think that's just the beginning. And then after that, it's, like you said, find your niche, man. I'm glad you said that's such a good point. Find your niche and let's go. Let's freaking go to work, man. Everybody versus racism. F racism. It's disgusting. It's stupid. I can't imagine growing up in a society where we're just judged by our skin color. You know what I mean? I can't imagine, but the fact is I did. And the fact is I'm not going to let Willa and MJ go through that. I'll be damned if I do, and I will fight tooth and nail to make sure that they don't have to look at their dad who's black and their mom who's white and have to identify with either which side am I going to identify. You know what I mean? I'll be damned if they have to live a life like that. And my wife and I know we're going to fight tooth and nail to make sure that doesn't happen.
Awesome. Appreciate you, man.
No problem. Appreciate you guys.
Well, this is a
long episode.
This is a big kickoff comeback for us at the House of Boots.
We're in a sophomore slump for sure.
I'm Josh, this is Jeremy, and that is Jerrod Slater himself. If you like this and you got anything out of it, share it on Facebook, share it on YouTube or whatever, but do something, help someone, say something, stand up. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Good job, Josh.